Welcome to the African Weekly Roundup, a weekly program every Sunday here on HORUFADHI Media, where I discuss the latest news and events across the African continent. I'm Sultan Mohammed, your host and producer here on HORUFADHI Media. We hope you find this program very informative. Please like, share, and for similar content, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media. Also, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media Group's second channel known as HORUFADHI TV, where you are currently watching this program and where you can find other exclusive programs such as Behind the Scenes and Maha Salah, among others. And last but not least, do follow myself, Sultan Mohammed, Suleiman Hashi, Yasin Abdi, and the wider HORUFADHI Media team on our social media platforms that should appear on the screen any moment. Let's get straight into the headlines, and we kick off with our top story in the Horn of Africa, where Somali security forces ended a battle to regain control of Benadir administration headquarters seized by Al-Shabab militants on Sunday. Police spokesman Sadiq Adan Ali said at the press conference inside the headquarters that at least 11 people, including 6 attackers, were killed during the siege. Militants from the group Al-Shabab, which said it was behind the attack, had been holed up in one of the rooms in the building. Now, this building of the Benadir administration is the lower house or the lower government's headquarters in the Benadir region, which is where the capital is situated. Now, the spokesman of the police added that security forces shot all attackers dead and several people were rescued during the attack. Now, the militant group Al-Shabab has claimed the attack officially. Now, the mayor's office is located in the local government headquarters building in a well-guarded area of the capital, Mogadishu. Roads in this area have concrete barriers and multiple roadblocks. It's very difficult for militants to simply just enter this place without being detected. And it's also a building about 1.5 kilometers away from Villa Somalia, the presidential palace of the country. So many are questioning how militants again managed to, worm their way through these buildings and blocks to get to where they are. Now, Abdikarim Abdurrahman, director of Amin Ambulance Services, told Reuters, an international news agency, that ambulance staff had so far evacuated 5 injured people from the scene of the blast at the time. Now, gunfire was still ongoing in the area in the afternoon, and it was difficult for ambulances to access the area, he said. We were in an office and we were deafened by a blast. We ran out. Gunfire followed, said Farah Abdullahi, who works in the mayor's office, also speaking to Reuters. Now, security forces immediately put the area under lockdown, but an exchange of gunfire between the army and assailants was ongoing. An intelligence officer who only gave his name, Ahmed, also told the news agencies, Mujahideen have stormed the well-guarded apostate local government headquarters of Mogadishu. We first started with suicide bombings and then foot fighters entered the building after killing the building guards, said Abdulaziz Abu Mus'ab, Al-Shabaab's military operations spokesman. Now, this is the spokesman or one of the senior leaders of the terrorist group based in Somalia, which currently has a bounty on his head. Now, Al-Shabaab frequently carries out bombings and gun assaults on the targets in Mogadishu and across the country. The group has been attacking Somalia's central government since 2006 as it seeks to topple it and replace it with its own rule that adheres to a extremely strict and misinterpreted version of Islam. Now, Al-Shabab has stepped up attacks in recent months in a show of resilience after President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud's government launched what it called an all-out war against the militants in August of last year. Now, this is not the first time Al-Shabab militants have conducted an attack against Somali government buildings. Last year, militants stormed the Ministry of Education, the capital, killing dozens before the militants were killed. In November of the same year, Al-Shabaab militants attacked Villa Rose Hotel within the presidential compound in the capital using 6 fighters wearing military gear, with one being a suicide bomber that blew up the entrance and enabled access for the rest of the cell. The ensuing attack killed 8 civilians and 1 government soldier, according to government sources, and at least 60 others were rescued from the hotel during the attack. Now, just a month prior to this incident, militants raided Tawakkal Hotel in Kismayo, which is the regional transitional capital of Jubaland federal member state of Somalia, which lasted an agonizing 7 hours, while civilians and staff members were stuck inside the hotel with deranged maniacs, thirsty for innocent victims. The security forces wrestled with militants over control for the entire Sunday afternoon as locals and onlookers watched on. And ultimately, the armed men were killed, but they killed 9 civilians during this attack, and while another 47 were injured. And lastly, in August, which began this all-out war declared by President Hassan Sheikh, Al-Shabaab militants rammed into Hayat Hotel in the capital using 2 vehicles loaded with explosive devices, followed by a swift assault on the hotel. Militants would eventually kill 21 civilians, with 117 others, with 15 in critical condition, according to the Ministry of Health of the Somali federal government. Conversely, the militants, of course, have exaggerated numbers, and they claim to have killed 63 people, but of course these numbers are not reliable in any way. And the group has stepped up its attacks, not just against government positions on the front lines, which we've seen in recent weeks, but specifically in the capital, which has seen a bulk of militant suicide attacks in recent months. This week, militants attacked newly liberated towns, including Hawadli and Gara'ad, killing a number of SNA commanders, including Major Hassan Toure, the deputy commander of Danab Commandos, a key unit of the SNA, or the Somali National Army, fighting the militants in the region. Now, Danab Commandos are trained by the US military, and Danab obviously meaning lightning. So these are known as lightning commandos. Now, conversely, the government has liberated large swathes of territories in Hirshabelle and Galmudug states of Somalia, as the government offensive, which began in August, has pushed militants out of key strongholds in the region, including Adan Yabal, Haradere, as well as Mahas, among other places. Early on Sunday, Jubaland State Forces announced their offensive against Al-Shabab, liberating a key town used by the group for extortion of civilians through illegal taxations. Now, the federal government has called the attacks that we've outlisted above as cowardly and have pledged to eradicate the group from Somalia by the end of 2023. Now over to Burkina Faso, where the Burkina Faso military regime told France it wants its troops to station in the country to leave within a month, state news agency AIB reported on Saturday. The Burkina Faso government last Wednesday denounced the accord, which was governed since 2018, the presence of French armed forces on its territories, state media said, adding that authorities had given France a month to complete its pullout. A source close to the government clarified it was not the severance of French relations, but rather the notification only concerns military cooperation agreements. Now, France has around 400 special forces stationed in Burkina Faso to battle an Islamist insurgency, but relations have deteriorated in recent months. Now, sources close to the French government have confirmed that the government in Paris' preferred option, which would see the redeployment of its forces in the south of neighboring Niger, where nearly 2,000 French soldiers are already stationed. The military leadership, led by Captain Ibrahim Traoré, seized power last September in the second coup in the former French colony in 8 months. Traoré's regime has been seeking to rekindle ties with Russia since his coup, which signifies a serious change in West Africa, which seems to be shifting away from its traditional Western allies and shifting more towards its allies in Russia. Now, French troops withdrew from Mali last year after a 2020 coup in the former French colony also saw its rulers have a closer relationship with Russia. Now, demonstrators have gathered in Burkina Faso's capital on Friday to demand the French ambassador leave the country and that the French military base there be closed. Now, 700 people flocked to a central square carrying placards with slogans such as "French Army, get out." Mohamed Sinon, one of the main leaders of the collective that called the demonstrations, said that it was to show support for President Traoré and the security forces fighting the jihadists. "We are Pan-African movement. We want cooperation between Burkina Faso and Russia, but also the strengthening of friendship cooperation with Guinea and Mali," he added. Protesters carried huge protest posters showing the presidents of Mali and Guinea, both of whom also came to power in coups, as well as Russian President Vladimir Putin. In October, anti-French demonstrations gathered outside the country's embassy in the capital of Burkina Faso, and the French Cultural Center was attacked. Another demonstration outside the embassy followed in November, and earlier this month, the French Foreign Ministry said that the Burkina Faso government had asked to replace its ambassador Luc Halad after he ruffled feathers with reports on Burkina's worsening security situation. Now, Burkina Faso government on Saturday thanked its northern neighbor of Mali for its help in the recent rescue of 66 women, children and babies from suspected Islamist jihadist militants after a week of captivity. Government spokesman Jean Emmanuel also told state television that all of the 68 freed captives, who included 27 minors and 4 babies, were doing quite well. All arrangements have been made for them to regain serenity, and after all that, we can consider their return to their respective families, he added. The captives were abducted by suspected terrorists in the northern Sahel region a little over a week ago. During his televised interview, government spokesman paid tribute to the brother country, and I quote that bit, Mali, saying that it had monitored their shared border so as to be able to follow the trail of the kidnappers and the women. Both countries are fighting a long-running Islamist jihadist insurgency that has claimed thousands of lives and forced millions to flee their homes. Early on Saturday, 700 people demonstrated in 2 major northern towns, Djubo and Kungusi, both of which have been subject to jihadist raids and blockade that has made them increasingly difficult for them to receive supplies. Demonstrators called for fresh supplies and thanked security forces for rescuing the women. The demonstrations came just 2 days after a series of attacks across the north of the country claimed the lives of around 30 people, half of who were members of an auxiliary force supporting the army. President Traoré said in December that his aim was to recapture the territory occupied by what he called hordes of terrorists. Now over to Tanzania, where Tanzania's main opposition party held on Saturday its first mass rally since the lifting of a ban imposed in 2016, raising hopes the government is committed to increasing political freedom in the East African nation. It was not easy after those 7 years of banning political meetings. The Director of Communication and Foreign Affairs for the Chadema party, John Mrema, told cheering supporters. This is the opposition party. Now, thousands of opposition supporters gathered at the grounds in the lakeside city of Mwanza, draped in the party's blue, red and white colours. We've been silent for almost 7 years, but finally our right is restored and we're ready to move ahead, Mwanza resident and party supporter Mary Disma said. Now, President Samia Hassan this month lifted the ban introduced by her hardline predecessor John Magufuli, who was nicknamed Bulldozer for his uncompromising leadership style. The government change of heart comes as Hassan, in power for 22 months, is seeking to break with some of Magufuli's previous policies. The move is cautiously welcomed as a gain for democracy by rights groups in the country's opposition parties. Now, Magufuli had banned political rallies early in his tenure, saying it was time for work, not politics. But critics said the ban applied only to opposition groups, while the ruling party free to assemble and rivals' gatherings were violently broken up by police and their officials being jailed. Now, there was early optimism when Hassan, the first woman elected as the country's president, reached out to rivals, reopened banned media outlets, and reversed some of Magufuli's most controversial policies. But her presidency fell under slight scrutiny when opposition party Chadema chairman Freeman Mbowe, along with a number of other senior party officials, were arrested in July 2021, just hours before they were to hold a public forum urging constitutional reform. Mbowe, who spent 7 months in prison on terrorism charges, is attending the Saturday rally organised in the port city where they were arrested. We are now going to strongly campaign for a new constitution and an independent electoral commission, this was told AFP news agency. Now, Chadema party officials said a series of grassroots rallies had been lined up. We will organise as many rallies as possible to reach all wards and villages in the country, said Sharifa Suleiman, acting chairman of the Chadema Women's Wing. This is our time to build the grounds for 2025 election, she said. Another official, Hashim Juma Isa, said the party was opening up a new page as it celebrated its 30th anniversary. Now, these are the top stories on the program today. We hope you found this program very informative. Please tune in next week for other top stories and headlines across the African continent.